Today, we're going to be going over the first part of this article. Its title is Drug Harms in the United Kingdom, a multi-criteria decision analysis. This article is readily available on the internet. It was published in Lancet in 2010, and the lead author is Dr. David Nutt. He helped to found an organization called the Independent Scientific Committee on Drugs. He and a group of other prominent scientists in the addiction field did this after Dr. Nutt lost his position as the drug czar of England, of the United Kingdom. And this paper presents his findings on 20 different drugs. From the summary of the paper, they point out that proper assessment of the harms caused by the misuse of drugs can inform policymakers in health, policing, and social care. In this study, they applied multi-criteria decision analysis modeling to a range of drug harms in the United Kingdom. That's what we're going to talk about today, is the methods that they utilized. He points out that members of the Independent Scientific Committee on Drugs met in a one-day interactive workshop to score 20 drugs on 16 criteria. 9 related to the harms that a drug produces in the person, and 7 to the harm to others. Drugs were scored out of 100 points and weighted to indicate their relative importance. They evaluated 20 different drugs that we'll go over in another discussion, but they showed that heroin, crack cocaine, and the methamphetamine were the most harmful drugs to individuals, whereas alcohol, heroin, and crack cocaine were the most harmful to others, and the scores are noted there. The very important sentence that at the end here shows that alcohol was the most harmful drug with an overall harm score of 72. The evaluation criteria that were used, to start off, we'll discuss the overall harm to the user. There were 9 of these. They looked at drug-specific mortality. In other words, they were looking at how lethal the drug was expressed as a ratio of lethal dose and standard dose. The next thing they looked at was drug-related mortality. And they were looking at the extent to which life is shortened by the use of the drug. Their examples include road traffic accidents, lung cancer, HIV, suicide. The next thing they looked at was drug-specific damage. In other words, how a person's physical health was damaged, and they have examples there. They next looked at drug-related damages. So how physical health, including consequences of, for example, sexual unwanted activities and self-harm, blood-borne viruses, emphysema, and damage from cutting agents. The next harm to the user is dependency. Most people know what this is. It's the extent to which you continue to use something despite adverse consequences. It's also known as addiction. Then the next thing they quantified was drug-specific impairment of mental function, such as amphetamine-induced psychosis, ketamine toxicity. The next thing they scored was drug-related impairment of mental functioning. And drugs can cause impairment of mental functioning, such as mood impairment and drug-specific impairment of mental functioning secondary to the drug user's lifestyle or drug use. The bottom line is, how much is a person's mental function damaged by the drug? The next thing they looked at in regards to harm to the individual was loss of tangibles, such as income, housing, jobs, educational achievements, criminal record, and imprisonment. All these things can happen from alcohol and drug use. And the last thing they looked at was the extent of loss of relationship with the family and friends. So these are the 9 criteria that they graded in regards to harm to the individual. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the potential harm to others. They looked at 7 criteria. The first that they looked at was injury. And what they looked at is the extent to which the drug increases the chance of injury to others, both directly and indirectly, such as violence, including domestic violence, traffic accidents, fetal harm, drug waste, secondary transmission of blood-borne viruses. These are all injuries that can happen from drugs. Next criteria was the crimes. The extent to which the use of the drug involves or leads to an increase in volume of acquisitive crimes. In other words, theft. And also they looked at crime directly and indirectly at the population level. The next criteria that they evaluated was environmental damage, the extent to which the use and production of a drug causes environmental damage locally, such as toxic waste from amphetamine factories and discarded needles. The next criteria that they looked at was family adversities, the extent to which the use of a drug causes family adversities, such as family breakdown, impairment of the economic well-being, and the emotional well-being, both of adults and young people. The next criteria that they utilized was international damage and the extent to which the use of a drug in the United Kingdom, where they were evaluating drugs, contributes to damage internationally, such as deforestation, destabilization of countries, international crimes, and new markets. The next criteria that they evaluated is economic cost, the extent to which the use of a drug causes direct costs to the country, such as increased utilization of healthcare, police, prison, social services, and other things. And then they also looked at the indirect costs, such as loss of productivity and absenteeism. The last criteria that they looked at in regards to damage and injury to the others was the extent to which the use of a drug creates decline in social cohesion and decline in the reputation of the community. I appreciate you listening to this beginning discussion of this very interesting scientific paper. I ask that you join me next time for part 2 of our review of this scientific article. Thank you for your attention.